Hello friends, your host Rick Lee James here. I wanted to give you a heads up that I am in the process of migrating the podcast to a new feed on rickleejames.substack.com, where you will be able to find all my podcasts in one place. You can still subscribe and listen through all the places where you normally listen, but the podcast will be showing up in a new feed. So if you want to continue getting the latest episodes, the best thing to do is to go to rickleejames.substack.com and subscribe using your email address, and from there you can be notified every time a new episode is released, and you will also be given a link to listen through whatever platform you prefer. So don't wait, go to rickleejames.substack.com and subscribe today so you don't miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening. Welcome to Voices in My Head, the official podcast of me, Rick Lee James. I'm a recording artist, a singer, a songwriter, an author, a worship leader, and an ordained minister in the Church of the Nazarene. The Voices in My Head podcast is where I discuss music, movies, books, pop culture, theology, and more with friends, colleagues, and sometimes just by myself. Now make sure to let me know what you think of today's episode by leaving me a review on iTunes, or by tweeting at me at Rick Lee James on Twitter. And please join my mailing list at rickleejames.com, where you can receive an email every time a new episode is released. And by the way, in case you're interested in a daily dose of kindness and encouragement beyond this podcast, I also run the Twitter account at Mr. Rogers Say, where I post daily quotes from Fred Rogers, one of the voices in my head. Well, I guess that's it for the intro, so sit back, relax, and listen to the latest episode of Voices in My Head. Welcome back to Voices in My Head. As always, I'm your host, Rick Lee James, and I'm so glad that you can be back with us again this week for another, what I know is going to be a great conversation. Dale Baker is with us here today. Dale is an old friend of mine that, honestly, I haven't talked to in many years, probably close to 20 years. It's not because of anything Dale did. I love Dale a lot. It's just that I moved away and I haven't really had a chance to talk to him that much. He lives in North Carolina, near where I used to live. He's a musician. I'm a musician, but our paths just haven't crossed that much over time. He's done great work for a lot of bands over the years. Chances are, if you've been walking in a grocery store lately, or in an elevator, or in a car, you've probably heard Dale playing at some point. Songs like Kiss Me or There She Goes from Sixpence None the Richer. That's Dale playing drums on those tracks. You may have heard him at some point playing with Over the Rhine. You may have heard him with Big Star when he was on tour. You may have heard him with a number of other bands over the years, or you may have heard him with his own band, which he goes by the artist name, the Maudlin Fee. He's here with me today to catch up a little bit and for me to be able to showcase some of his music here on the show. And I'm so glad that we just had this chance to catch up and to have a chance to visit and to be able to share the music with my podcast listeners today. So Dale Baker, AKA the Maudlin Fee, welcome to Voices in My Head.
Thanks, Rick. It's so good to see your face and to hear your voice and to catch up. So this is a lot of fun, and I'm glad that I'm here. So thanks for having me on.
Well, it's really good to see you today. It has been some time, but honestly, it's one of those things that it doesn't. Now that we're talking, it doesn't feel like it's been that long because we used to have these conversations in North Carolina. Just to catch the listeners up, I lived in Burlington, North Carolina, which I would say by interstate is maybe 45 minutes or so, something like that, from Durham. I'm trying to remember. And oftentimes on my day off, I used to drive over to near where you live, to the Duke University campus. And a lot of times I would spend time at Duke Chapel there. Well, we ended up having a mutual friend, my professor, Steve Hoskins, who was still one of the best professors I ever had at Tribeca University. And it turns out he was coming to visit because he was doing something at my church. And I brought him over, I think, to visit you, and he was having breakfast with you. And they ended up, the three of us had breakfast one morning, I think is what happened, when I was taking him back to the airport or something. And just somewhere in there, we connected. And so every now and then on Thursdays, on my day off, I'd come over and hang out with you a bit.
Yeah.
And we'd play guitar together sometimes. Mostly I would talk. But what I remember more than anything, other than you just being one of the coolest guys I'd ever met, an amazing drummer and musician, I remember I was having a rough time at the church I was at. I was just going through a difficult period in my life. And you were just somebody that was such a support for me. And in ways you probably don't even realize, just being able to hang out with you and be able to just have somebody to just kind of go, you know what, I'm just hurting a little bit right now. I don't know where else to turn, and just to have that listening ear. So I really haven't had a way in all these years to just reach out and say thank you. So as much as anything today, as we start, I guess I want to start by saying thank you for being that kind of person that was just there for me all those years ago, as we start today, because you really were there for me in some big ways back then, in a lot.
So. Oh man, Rick, thank you so much. That's really kind of you to say that. I'm glad that that I could be there for you in that way. It's always interesting to me how I feel like the times that we're used, this doesn't happen all the time, but I feel like the times that when I've had people tell me, oh, hey, you really spoke into my life, or you blessed me, or God really used you, or whatever they say, the times where I can't remember what I did are usually more impactful than the times where I'm like, yeah, no, I was totally trying to minister to you there. Or I had an agenda, God told me to tell you this or whatever. I like how sneaky that is, So if that God can work through us in ways that sometimes we're not aware of,
Yep.
Um,
That's true. Sneaky might be the best way to do it. So
I think
no,
so. I think so. Yeah.
there was a real ministry of presence there for sure. Well, going into that from there, we had this connection with music, and I always appreciated what a great musician you were, and the times that I got to see you play, I always enjoyed that, and got to hear you play. And you were learning guitar at that time, and so you were just kind of beginning in the process. And so I would bring my guitar from time to time, and you've really progressed over the years, as a musician, both as you were a musician at the time for sure, amazing powerhouse musician, but as a guitar player, you got even better as time went on, which that's not something everybody can say. You can, not all drummers are also great on other instruments as well. And you became quite a good singer songwriter, and you have this real knack with words. When I listen to your music, and I always hate to compare people to other artists, because then I'm afraid they'll go like, I don't like those artists very well. Yeah. But when I listen to the Maudlin Fee, which everybody listening, I want you to check out the Maudlin Fee online, and we'll have links on the podcast. But there is this real kind of folksy feel to it that it falls somewhere for me when I'm listening between like Tom Petty and Sufjan Stevens. Like it's somewhere on the gamut of that. And it's hard for me to classify, maybe because it's not derivative of either of those two guys by any means. But there's just something about the soulfulness and the feel, and there's this stylistic feel, and something about the way you hang on a phrase sometimes, and then the way that the interesting things you'll do with background vocals and things. They can get Sufjan-esque at times, which sometimes I feel like what Sufjan will do with instruments, I can hear in vocals sometimes in the music and things with you. But It's real interesting stuff. I enjoy it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I know that at the time that you and I were hanging out, I was, I, there's been a thread throughout my life where I've wanted to be a songwriter. I remember in high school showing a friend of mine like, "Hey, here's a lyric," and he's like, he looks at it, and he goes, there's been like 20 songs with that same lyric, right? And I'm like, what? I thought I was original here, and so it was like wah wah wah, and so like I would like stop writing, right?
Hmm.
And then I went to college, and I remember being in college, I would go into the piano room, and I'm like, if I could write a song like Michael W. Smith, So I'm just like sitting there and play these chords, and I could never get anything, And then because I was there to study drums, not be a songwriter, I didn't even know that was really yeah, it wasn't a thing at this music school. And then when I was in Sixpence, I would occasionally come up with an idea for a song, uh, and I would take it to Matt, who's the lead songwriter. And I remember being so excited, hey, I think I got something here. Maybe we can make it into something. And then he'd be like, well, it's interesting that you just wrote a song because I just wrote a song as well. Let me play it for you. And then it would be something like Kiss Me. And it's just like, oh, I have no business trying this, And then when we moved to Nashville, Sixpence had an affiliation with Word Records, and they had a stable of writers that if you were an artist, you could write with them in a writer's room. So I was like, I'm in Nashville. I get a chance to write with a Nashville songwriter. So I remember
Yeah.
going in with Andy Golahorn,
Oh yeah.
who's
That's
a great
right.
guy, right? And I'm like, I got some ideas. Maybe you can help me flesh this stuff out, And so I came up with this idea for a song and had words and all that. And he's like, "Here, let me work. That's really great. I like that. Let me take it home and work on it." So he comes back, and he plays me the song, and it doesn't have any of my words in it. It's got my title though. I'm like, "This is amazing. This is a great song." So how does it work out? Like, are we co-writers, or how do we? How does the business side of this work? And he goes, "No, I wrote this. Like, I just used your title. You can't copyright a title." I was like, "Dang it!" So,
Oh, dude.
so like every point along the way, I'm wanting to move into what it would look like to be a songwriter, and I'd read books on songwriting, or I'd read books on writing, and so the
Mhm.
idea of like a writer, like the whole path of taking an idea and turning it into a finished entity, what does that entail? And so that's always kind of been in the back of my mind as I've made a career as a drummer.
Mhm.
And in the last few years, and so, typically in the life of an artist, you get resistance like what I got, and that would increase the fire inside of you so that you would push even harder
Mhm.
to overcome whatever deficiencies you have in the thing that you want to do. And I did that in my drumming career, uh, you know, uh, but in my songwriting, not so much. And so in these last, 10 or so years, it's just kind of become this thing where um, uh, I've wanted to pursue it, more wholeheartedly. And
Yeah.
that's kind of lined up with a lot of just self-development, self-reflective stuff that's going on. And I also look back and see that my friends, Jonathan and Amanda Noel, the Noels, there's the great songwriters that I knew back in Nashville, you
Mhm.
know, however many years ago. But Jonathan's a worship leader, and they moved to Raleigh, which is, similar to Burlington, just on the other side of Durham. And
Sure.
he and I started hanging out, and it, I think being with him, he brought up that desire to be a songwriter again. And
Yeah.
so I know that some of the encouragement I got from him and his wife would host a group of us um, once a month for a while, and so we would each. It was a great sort of um, deadline. Like I'm gonna hang out with my friends in a month, and will I have a new song to show them? I don't know. And so typically, in the week before we would all get together, a song would show up.
Yeah.
And so it was a safe environment to kind of share share my songs and be encouraged. And so that's kind of it's interesting, like the thread, like knowing you 20 years ago, and that desire to move into songwriting or to be a solo performer on some
Mhm.
level, and then for it to take as long as it has for me
Yeah.
to get something released or to create in that way. It's been a journey. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and it can be hard to find your niche at some point and exactly who you are. Like I look back at songs that I've written over the years and especially back when we first met, and they're just songs I would never do again, that I thought, man, this was good. I liked those songs back then. And now I think like I'm not even sure if I even agree with those, like lyrically, if even as a person I even agree with some of those things anymore. It's kind of interesting the paths that you take as a person and as a writer. And then different people you meet, like you said, it's important to have like safe places to share those songs. And I think sometimes what hinders us as writers is we don't often have a good safe environment to share new things where we can get like good constructive criticism too. Sometimes that makes so much difference when you have like someone you can share something with and they can not just give you praise on it but can like give you like this is good and let me show you the parts of this I like, but let me approach this as if I was co-writing this with you and say, this is how I would maybe tweak it. What would you think if we took it here? And that's been like, to me as a writer, things I've valued so much when I've had people that lovingly critiqued me in a way that
Yeah.
that can, if you hold on to your ego too tight, it can hurt at first because you think you're being attacked.
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
then you realize, no, this person cares about me and they ultimately care about the song and they want it to be better. And I think what you're talking about with finding that group of people where you can find a safe place to share a new song, in an environment like that, it actually can be such a good environment for new songs to grow. So I can totally see that it taking years to find an environment to where you feel like, hey, I'm starting to like flourish as a songwriter. And I think we see this sometimes as, a lot of times, um, I'll get my grandma before she passed away. This is maybe a good example of this. She got into painting at the end of her life, in the last, I would say 15, 20 years. And
Yeah.
she became very good at it, but to my knowledge, she never painted before then, but she finally found like an environment. And we've got all these paintings like in the family, like through the
Yeah.
years that she just finally like I'm going to be a painter and I'm going to do it, and she figured it out because she found some place that nurtured that and helped her through it. So, I mean, I'm talking too much now about all this, but
No,
I think it's a good
yeah.
point you're bringing up though. Like it takes as long as it takes, and I think it's a good lesson for everybody listening. Like if you feel like you're at a place where you're not where you want to be, it's okay to keep growing, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because we certainly are all at different places and different progress on our journey for sure, and we can keep growing from there.
Yeah, I think I look back at it. I think encouragement is a big thing, and so the reason I became a drummer is because I got a lot of external validation for what I was bringing, at a very young age. And so when I started writing songs, not so much external validation,
Mm.
um, and uh, and so that desire to want to be good at something, and you take it to someone that you respect. Nashville is not the place to go to write your first song.
It's true. That's the
Right.
truth.
You gotta find it's kind of like before you go to like a state school or a private university, maybe just go to that technical college that's in your hometown. Like start small
Mhm.
and build on success. And so I think for me, I look back and I go, I was missing encouragement. Why didn't I get the encouragement I need? Make it someone else's fault, right? But I also realized that I have a really tough internal critic. And
Mm.
so that internal critic would shut down any sort of sense of play. I feel like to create, we've got to get into a sense of play or a sense of like curiosity and just follow the muse wherever it's going to take us, even if we know, and so the critic will be like, that's crazy. Don't write a song about a tree. Nobody does that. And then being able to push back to the critic going, no, we're going to write a song about a tree. Yeah, no, I'm definitely going down that path. But it's going to suck. Yeah, it probably will, but I'm going to write a song about a tree, whether you like it or not,
Yeah.
And so learning how to kind of do that dance with my own internal critic, and some of that too, I've done my own work, but I also found a few years ago there was a friend of mine, Nate Fancher, he's a great guy, and another guy, David Dollar, who's a guitar player, songwriter, and we all formed a songwriting collective called The Great Promise. And so our goal was, hey, let's start a band. How much time do we have? We're all busy people. We've got families, etc. And so we settled on, we pretty much only had 4 hours every week that we could carve out of our schedule. So, okay, we got 4 hours. So we are going to set some goals and left brain this thing as best as we can. So instead of creating a band like we were when we were 16, we're creating a band as adults that know how the business works. And so we sat down for 4 hours every like Monday or Tuesday, and we chipped away at an EP, and we wrote songs together. And working with them, the sort of the one of the songs from the Maudlin Fee record that I was putting out showed up at our first rehearsal, and they're like, hey, does anybody have any songs? And I thought, man, I'm kind of in awe that I get to hang out with these two really great songwriters. They had both released records. I hadn't released anything. And they're like, well, we didn't bring anything. Dale, you got anything? I was like, well, I've got two ideas, and so I played them the demo of Why Don't We? And which is a song that just kind of, I was just messing around, having a good time, coming up with something. And my friend Nate was like, this is amazing. Like, we should do this. And I started thinking they were just making fun of me and that it was a joke. And I just remember being in tears. We're working on one of my songs that I wrote, and it actually sounds good as a band arrangement. And the great promise that the three of us, our arrangement was different than the one that I put on my record. But just getting that feedback and that excitement from my bandmates of like, this is good, let's chip away at this. And also the collaborative nature of that group, just it brought back to mind how much I enjoy creating music with other people. I enjoy creating projects or creative things with other people. I don't like I think I'm a better person when I get to bump up against someone else. So I love the brainstorming. I love the sharing of ideas. And so that experience with those guys, brought back to me that joy of, making music in a community, even if the community is just three people, but that I think that encouragement of sitting around and us all trying to write songs together, and I might have two sentences that I could throw out on the table, and they were like, man, we love how you flip those words around. We like your alliteration. We like what you're bringing. We like that idea. And so we would just kind of riff on each other's ideas, for 4 hours on a Monday. And I was like, okay, so this, I can kind of see what my strengths are as a songwriter, what I can bring to the table as far as a musician and arranger and a producer. But I don't think I can deliver it all. I don't think I'm a one-man show. Like, I need people around me to help me get it across the finish line, And so I think all that to say that encouragement and a supportive community can go a long ways towards helping you achieve your goal.
Well, let me ask you, because I really like that song, Why Don't We? And it's one of my favorite Maudlin Fee songs, but you're saying there's another arrangement out there then.
There is.
So I need to look that one up. Say again what the name of the...
Well, so it's like, you might be able to find us on Instagram, but the name of the band was The Great Promise.
The Great Promise. Okay.
Yeah. And it lasted maybe a year. And then Nate moved away, and then David we all kind of just, I think Nate moved away and then David moved away. But some of that music, I think we were only able to get three songs pushed out. But the idea was like, okay, start in January. We're going to write from January until May, 4 hours a week. And whatever we've got at May, we stop writing and we start producing.
Okay.
So from May until August, we'll produce the songs that we've created.
Okay.
And then September to December, that will be when we release it. So we'll put on these different hats at different times of the year. And we'll schedule this like a liturgical calendar so that we know, hey, it's May. Okay, we've stopped writing. I know you've still got great ideas, but we're not writing right now. We are producing, you know. Yeah. And what if you took that idea and just rinsed and repeated it over, 5 years, 10 years? It's a super sort of left brain OCD way of doing something, but it's like, well, if your idea is to produce music and you're having a hard time giving yourself a deadline because you don't have a label or a management team or anything, like how do you build in that structure? And so this was a thought experiment that we were trying. Is like, well, let's plan it out, and we got three songs and a bunch of starters of other ones, but we produced 3 tracks, and I don't even know if they're available. Like I can send you a link, but I don't know if you can play them or not. I don't.
Yeah, that'd be
guys. If you could,
that'd be fun to hear them sometime.
Yeah.
That'd be neat to hear. Well, that's that is the fun though. I've found for my own, doing stuff independently too. I've had to kind of set deadlines for myself too, or at least try to, and that's when I've probably become the most productive. Is when I've done that. If I just willy-nilly say, well, I'm gonna do it, it just doesn't get done for me anyway. Like I usually have to set aside.
Yeah. There's something about that commitment, and so having a deadline, or the other thing I've done really good at for myself is I'll just intentionally set up ways to embarrass myself. And so around the time that we were doing this Great Promise thing, I thought, wouldn't it be great to I want to perform as a singer-songwriter, and I have a bunch of friends that are singer-songwriters, but they'll never ask me to play for them because I'm not good enough yet. There's plenty of other really great opening acts. I'm not one of them yet, but I need time in the saddle. So wait a second. I was in a famous band. Maybe I can use my name as a reason for a show. This is what I'll do. This is a great idea. I'll come up with a concert that's Dale Baker Presents. Okay, that's too boring. So I came up with Dale Baker's Big Old Night of Music.
Yeah.
And so I grew up going to all these country music shows back in Branson, Missouri, and it would be like these sort of variety shows of country music. So I was like, I'll just do one of my Branson shows, and because it's my show, I'm going to have my band, the Maudlin Fee, be on the bill.
Right.
And then I'll stack it with all my other friends who have names, who have an audience, and maybe some people will show up.
Yeah.
And all while I'm doing that, I'm like, this is not going to go well at all. Like, you're going to be such a failure at this. This is not going to go well. And but from that, from setting up this one, I did it once in Raleigh and I did it once in Nashville. Both times it was like, what have I gotten myself into? And but it was this commitment. Like once it's on someone's calendar and I've asked my friends, I get so invested that I can't pull out easily. So it's either, keep walking in that direction or give up, and it's like, I'm gonna, I know what it's going to be like to give up. I don't know what the outcome's going to be like if I keep plowing forward. So I'm going to keep plowing forward and push through that anxiety. And what I found is that when I've done that, I look back on that time as like, I'm so happy and glad and proud, and I just think I'm the coolest guy, like, for having done that. But in the moment, as it's happening, I am just a mess. It's like, please take this away. I can't handle this stress. Like, So it's this weird thing of like, I want to be a creative, I want to be an artist, I want to make music, but when I'm in the midst of it,
Yeah.
it just doesn't feel right at all.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh wait, I thought I would enjoy it, but I don't. It's just such a weird dynamic. It's like I enjoy it once it's created, but the process of producing it and creating it and the drama that happens in the middle of that is always just. It's like it's not like that in the movies. They
Yeah.
go into the studio and everybody's happy and they do this thing and you know.
Yeah. 15 minutes later, the whole album's recorded. And they're
Yeah,
done.
yeah. Why isn't
Yeah.
it that easy for me? Why is it so dang hard? You know.
Yeah. We've seen that movie, Music and Lyrics, with Hugh Grant and Drew Barrymore, and they go in, and 10 minutes later they've got a demo. They get to the airport, the new artist records it, and they're famous. Yeah, and so
Yeah,
that's how it
exactly.
works.
It's just that way. Yeah, yeah.
No, I chuckle as you tell that story because I know that I feel exactly that same way because I've done that, almost that exact scenario, with like renting out theaters and things, and bringing in friends. And like I used to do, it's been well over 10 years ago now. I started doing, at New Year's Eve, I did a couple of them in a row, the picking parties, the Rick Lee
Yeah, yeah,
James
yeah,
picking
yeah.
parties. And I'd bring in friends from Nashville and different places, and
Uh-huh.
come in and really overextended myself and just prayed I would sell enough tickets to, do it. And I always did. I always came out with a couple $100 in my pocket when it was
Yep.
done. It was just enough to cover the
Yep.
theater expenses and just barely, get by. But that was such a help. But that panic you're talking about, and sort of feeling in the moment like, oh man, this is too big. But it was such a learning moment. So yeah, I'm kind of laughing as you're telling that story, because unless you've done it, like, you don't know what it just feels like. You've got the world on your shoulders, when you're
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
doing that kind of thing. Or like you said, when you're going into a studio and you're trying to figure out how to make that project work, and figure it out with the budget that you have, and the limited amount of time, and the musicians that you have, and the resources. So yeah, it's a whole other thing. And I'm sure a lot of musicians listening now are going, yep, I know that feeling. I
Yeah.
get it for sure. So
Yeah,
it's
there's a book I read several years ago, and they had these affirmations that you were supposed to just tell yourself,
mhm.
and I was like, okay. It was like a performance book. What's it was called? Oh, Effortless Mastery by Kenny Werner.
Okay.
And in that book, he's got these meditations and affirmations, and so one of the affirmations was, "It's not hard. It's just unfamiliar. Everything is easy.
Mm,
The difference is it's just not familiar."
mm,
And so I've used that in my teaching. I teach drum lessons, and music to other people, but I've used that to also for myself, is like when you get into these situations where it's like, this is insane. I can't. How am I gonna get through this? It's like, no, it's hard. I get it. You're under a lot of stress, but it's not so much that it's hard. It's just unfamiliar. You've
yeah.
just not used these muscles before. This is a skill, putting on a show, producing a record, writing a song, learning how to play guitar. Those are all skills, and we can all learn those skills. And I know there looks like there's some people that just magically were born to do that. But at the end of the day, it's still a skill, and you can get pretty darn good if you just commit yourself to learning that skill.
Yeah.
Whether or not you're going to be like a famous musician or whatever, I can't tell.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee on that. But you will get good if
Yeah.
you become familiar with the thing that you want to do,
Yeah.
and that started to change. Just that phrase, it's not hard, it's just unfamiliar. And it's like, well, what things are familiar in my life?
Yeah.
It's like, well, my relationships, my friends. Okay, so familiar, that means you spend time. So what you're saying, you spend time with the things that you love. You
Yeah.
spend time with the people you love. So start thinking about your guitar playing as a relationship. Is that a relationship you want in your life? Is writing a song, is it worth your time to keep pursuing, you know,
Yeah.
this person or this song or this idea or whatever? And it's like that, flipping it around, it's like, I don't have to be good. I just have to become familiar.
Yeah.
And it takes the judgment out of it. And as long as it's bringing me joy in the same way that my close relationships bring me joy, I just love hanging out with my friends and talking. I'm loving hanging out, talking with you, Rick. It's like, this is what I want from music, is this sense. And as we, and the idea, I think, for me is like, the more you do it, the better you'll get. Of course, that's what they all say. But I'm not doing it from, from a critical judgment. Am I going to make an A on the test sort of thing? I'm just doing it because I enjoy being in the moment, being, in the, pursuing it,
Yeah.
And it feels, it kind of gets me back to, when I first started playing drums, I would just sit at the drums and just play, not even thinking about time. It was just a place of joy for me,
Yeah.
And so the songwriting and the performing and all this stuff is, I find that it's a challenge and it's interesting to me, but as long as I can keep focusing on that, it's great. When I start to compare myself to my friends, I come up short every single time, so it's like, well, just keep at it. Maybe you'll write a good song one of these days, but in the meantime, you're having a blast. And that's good. That's also good, Yeah.
Comparing ourselves to others, it's such a killer, because you're just never going to be that person you want to be. You're only going to be who you are always. And that doesn't mean you don't strive to get better, but man, I know that feeling so well, of like, but I wish I could write like that. And just a quick story about that in that vein, and then I actually do have a couple of questions I want to ask you before our time is up today. But the city I live in, come to find out, it's the hometown of Stephen Curtis Chapman's wife. So he comes back to this area quite a bit, and there's a lot of, I've never got to like meet him or anything, but there's a lot of mutual friends in the area. And somebody who I was talking to a while back, this is just to talk to what you were just saying about comparing yourself to other people, no matter what level you're at. He had come to town, and a friend of a friend, they took him out like on a boat somewhere nearby here, just as like it was a holiday time. So Stephen Curtis and a few other people are out on this lake nearby here, and they're just kind of hanging out. He had some downtime, and as they're talking, he's talking a little bit about music, and Stephen Curtis says, apparently, to one of these people on the boat, says, if I could just write like Chris Tomlin, I just really wish I could write a good song like that, And I remember thinking, from the dude who's won more awards than anybody else in his field, like right now, even he is saying like, I wish I could be like that guy, or whatever. So I guess there's just not a point that any of us will get to where at some level we don't go like, I wish I could be that other person. And yet, go ahead.
I think the takeaway is that you have a unique voice. There's only one of you ever in the entire history of everything, right? And so you have a unique voice, just like everyone else has a unique voice. And so if pursuing the art of songwriting or drumming or whatever, the goal is to, you got to learn your technique, you got to learn the skills. That's all really great. You got to learn to read and write, essentially. But the fun part is that after you've kind of learned the rules, then what's your voice telling you, like, and getting in touch with that, and then trying to apply those rules to the thing that is uniquely your voice. And as you do it, it's like you're not gonna whatever. I remember hearing people say, write 100 songs first before you even show anybody anything. Like, it's rinse and repeat, and over time you get familiar with the ways that you want to express yourself or the words that you want to say. And then as you learn the rules and you learn, what's right and what's wrong, you can play around with those and then either justify your blatant, rule breaking of songwriting, conventions, or realize, oh wait, that song could be better because I know what makes a song strong or weak, and so, so in a lot of ways, the Maudlin Fee is my sort of master's project of me just trying to become a better musician and to become more empathetic to the people I play with. And I love it. It's so much fun. It's so great. Yeah.
Well, one question that let's have you answer this one for the audience. The Maudlin Fee is an interesting name. for the band, first of all. So explain the name, first of all, because I know a lot of people listening might be wondering about that.
So to sum it up, the Maudlin Fee, Maudlin, you can look it up on Wikipedia, and maybe I should do that before I try to explain it what it is. But it's a sort of archaic or overly sentimental is the word maudlin. Maudlin means overly sentimental.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was coming up with a name for a band, I thought maudlin is a really great word in that I'm an overly sentimental person. I'm very idealistic. And so the Maudlin Fee. There's a longer story here, and I could tell you that one as well. But the short story that you're going to get is the Maudlin Fee is the price you pay for being overly sentimental.
Okay.
So when you care too much, you make choices, and sometimes those choices are not the best choices for those situations. And so when I look back over my life, I see my sense of justice and what's right, and I need to stand up to the man. That's what's gotten me in trouble. Like when I've gotten, in the movie, the small guy sticks it to the man and then it all works out in the end. Well, in reality, no, it doesn't work out that way. The little man goes away and you never hear from him again because he was an idiot for trying to take on the big man, right?
Well,
it's like if you want to stay in the arena, you might want to. Yes, I get it. You need to stick it to the man, but there might be another way to go about that so you actually stay in the arena with the man.
Right.
If you get kicked out of the arena, you're no longer you can't affect change at all, right?
Exactly, right.
And so that's kind of there's another layer to the name Maudlin Fee, but it also reminds me of my desire to want to be vulnerable and to be present in this world, and harkens back to we've all got shame and we've all got stories that we're all trying to overcome, and it's worth the work to put yourself out there. And so when I look at the Maudlin Fee, I'm reminded of all these things, not all of them, but a big swath of things that used to bring me lots of shame, and now I look back at them and just kind of smile and go, well, that was, you're making choices with the information, the best information that you had at the time. You're making choices with the information. What's the phrase? You were doing the best with the information that you had at the time, or
Right.
whatever.
There you go.
And some of it played out well, some of it didn't play out so well, and so I was like, let's don't hide that. Let's don't hide, the parts of you that you're ashamed of. Let's just pull it out there. And the Maudlin Fee will be this great sort of play on words that encapsulates not only that, but it also, a lot of my songs are about, I'm trying to write the perfect love song, or I just want to write a good pop song,
Yeah.
And so that, I tend to kind of lean towards the sentimental
Yeah.
thoughts. So
That's good.
yeah.
So the Maudlin Fee, that's basically the price that you pay for caring too much. That's good. I like that a lot. That's really good. And I think it's a cool, it's a cool story behind the band, and it's neat to be able to like tell the tale behind it and everything too. So I want to ask you, and I feel like I'd love to talk for a lot longer, but unfortunately, life goes on, and got a son to pick up from school, and all kinds of things is going to keep me from doing that. But I do want to ask you this, because you're a person who's done a lot in your life for sure, and you're such a talented musician, and not just such a talented musician. You're a great photographer. I remember seeing a lot of your pictures in the past. You're a person who likes to read. I remember that about you, and you even shared some books with me that I still have in my possession over the years. Yeah,
Wow.
and I've hung on to them. I remember you loved Henry Nouwen, and I liked him a lot too. But I think just talking about Nouwen with you, several times made that deepen for me, in different ways.
Oh, wow.
So I think over the years, I mean, we just naturally change and grow as people, for sure. And things that we one time thought like, this is it, this would be success if I could just get here.
Yeah.
different places in our life, maybe we start to think of that differently, and what that means, and things that become more important. I sure know that, like, when I became a father, uh, my whole perspective changed. The whole world,
Yeah. Yeah.
everything became a little more dangerous in some ways. Like, no, don't touch that. Don't, like,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
the whole world, you just start looking at things all differently. So, I guess my question I wanted to ask you, at the stage of life you're in, because you're playing different music, and you've kind of been at the heights of things, and you've done the independent artist thing. You've done the thing where you've played the big shows, you've been on TV, you've played coffee houses. I mean, you've done everything pretty much in the music world. How would you, just as a person, as Dale Baker, how do you define success in your life right now? And what does that feel like for you? I mean, what do you look for out of life? And you just say, I'm successful if I just have this.
I think, man, that's a good question. That's really great.
Nothing
I
like making you go deep on that last one.
Oh no, I love it. I love
It's
this stuff, man. I live for this. Um, yeah, I would say. So I'll say two things. I think success for me is being present in this
mm,
moment, and in this moment, and in this moment.
yeah.
Right? So, so can I be here right now with you, talking, and not be thinking about what happened yesterday or what happened 10 years ago or what my goals are for the future. Um, I think, I think that's what success is. Can I be fully in this moment and content?
Yeah.
Uh, or I don't even know if contentment, I think that adds another level to it. Can you just be here and whatever you're feeling, can you feel it?
Yeah.
And where do you feel it? Can you be aware of what's going on right now?
Yeah.
And as I do that, I start to tear up and things start to get a lot quieter. And the things that are really important start to show up, and the things that are not really important start to fall away.
Mm.
Uh, and so, whenever I can get back to that place of quiet, I'm doing it right now. I can't believe it. Thanks, Rick. Uh, it's going to be okay.
Mm.
Whatever it is, it's going to be okay because we have this moment right here.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that's probably success for me right now. Um, I know that in the past I used to, you know, attach certain meaning to certain goals, and now I can see that there might be some validity in doing that. That might be. I'm gonna feel really good about myself if I can release my record. I know that was a goal. Like, I was grieving the thought that I might not actually get these songs done. And with any creative project, you get to about like the last quarter of the project where you're trying to push this thing out, and there's always a chance that it's like it's not going to happen. Like the last 10 yards is just seems like it's the hardest to get that thing over the finish line or whatever it is. And so that resistance, being able to push through that resistance, that was a goal. Like, I just want to do this because it sounds like a fun goal, and whatever I get from it, I don't really care. I just want to do it just to say I've done it. And um, but am I successful like for that? Like, none of this matters, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, ultimately, right? Like, we're gonna die here,
Mhm.
before too long. Hopefully we'll get another 50, 60 years out of it. But
Mhm.
there's plenty of people that thought they were the end all be all, but we can't remember their names. you
Mm.
know they wrote some amazing books, but some of those books aren't being published anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So so what's really important, and I think it's like I think being present, um you know being
Yeah.
here now, I think is probably how I'd answer that question.
Be here now. Nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that answer at all. I think
Yeah.
that's a good one. So, well, I think what I'd like to do is we close the show today. I'm going to close it by playing one of your tracks. whichever one you decide you're going to send me over email as we close our conversation today. Do you have a favorite song that you'd like to close the show with?
Yeah, I'll close it with this one. So there's two that are kind of special, but the one that you're going to play is called An Acorn. I think it's called An Acorn, a Seed, or maybe Acorn and a Seed.
Okay.
And the premise of the song came out of years ago. Someone turned me on to Richard Rohr's book called Falling Upward.
Oh yeah.
And I signed up for Richard Rohr. He's got like daily emails that he sends out. And I really got into reading those emails, and they really impacted me on a as a Christian. He helped me see where my faith fit into the larger picture, and really helped ground some of the doubts and the fears that I had about my faith and questions and stuff like that. And so in some of these emails, he mentioned Julian of Norwich, and she mentions that she was holding a nut, an acorn in her hand, and she said, "This is everything that is. Here's this little seed. Everything that is in the palm of my hand." And around that time, I had a friend who's was posting on Facebook about her mother, who was going through cancer and was in the process of passing away. And I wanted to write something that would honor this woman's life, and that would also, I felt, a lot of emotion for my friend. She was being really vulnerable on Facebook, and so you can listen to the song and not hear any of that in there, but in the process of writing the song, there are probably like 4 pages about this woman's cancer diagnosis, that I just threw away because it didn't serve the song. And so at the very end, I came up with this really simple song that's almost too simple and probably isn't good enough to be a real song. But the agenda I'm pushing is it good enough? In its simplest form, can this song work? And so I made a demo of this thing, and I felt really good about it. I played it for a friend of mine, and we were in his pickup truck listening to it, and he had an emotional reaction to this thing. He was like, "Oh my God, dude, you totally did it. This is amazing," And so his encouragement, his visceral reaction to this demo I made of this song, really encouraged me to do more of these songs. And so his encouragement led to me actually finishing a whole project that I could say is a collection of songs under the banner of the Maudlin Fee. And so that's why you're going to play An Acorn and a Seed, because it was the song that kind of started this whole process of, we're doing this. We're going to have a band. We're going to call it the Maudlin Fee, and we're going to release these songs on Spotify. So
that's terrific. Well, that's great. Well, we are going to close our time out together by doing that. Then we're going to play An Acorn and a Seed. But I want to let all our listeners know you can find out more about Dale by going to his website at themaudlinfee.com, or I'm sure if you just look up Dale Baker and maybe even put Dale Baker drummer, you'll find him pretty easily that way for sure. There's so much more to find out about Dale, and it's been a real pleasure getting to catch up with you today. I'm so glad that you were able to make some time and come on the show. And as I say to my guests every week, thank you for being one of the voices in my head this week.
Thank you so much, Rick. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much.
It's all here right now. Everything that is in the palm of the hand. Acorn, a seed, everything we need. This is everything that is. It's all here right now. Everything that is in the palm of the hand. An acorn, a seed, everything we need. This is everything that is. This is good. This is grace, everything is here in its right place. An acorn, a seed, everything we need. This is everything that is. Yeah. Jesus, I'll always see in you. You are everything that is. Oh, you are everything that is. All right here, all right now. Everybody sing in your own space. An acorn, a seed, everything we need. You are everything that is. This is 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 everything. An acorn, a seed, everything we need. This is everything that is. Oh, this is everything that is.
Thank you for joining me here this week on Voices in My Head. I hope you'll visit me on my website at rickleejames.com, where you can find out more about me, get my music on vinyl and CD, follow my blog, and even schedule me for a concert or a speaking engagement. Better yet, even a book signing in your neighborhood. You can find all that and more at rickleejames.com. Also, it would mean a great deal to me if you could write a review of this podcast on iTunes. The more positive reviews that we receive, the more visible this podcast will be online. And now, for the benediction. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit you may abound in hope. God bless you, and thank you for listening to Voices in My Head.